For a lot of us, we never set out to be the boss. It was our technical or process proficiency that placed us in our current role. Or maybe your former situation forced us to step out on our own. You've heard the old adage, you join a company for the job and you leave because of the boss. If you want to know why compassionate accountability is key to great leadership, then we've got just the expert for you. Dr. Gary McGrath. Dr. Gary is a leadership guru, National Speaker Associated certified speaking professional, and podcaster. His mission is to help good bosses become great leaders and stresses the need for compassionate accountability. Dr. Gary, welcome to the Subscription Maker Impact.
Thanks, Zachary. Really looking forward to it. Any chance I get to talk about leadership, I'm ready to go.
That's what we're here for. So, just so we're on the same page, what is compassionate accountability?
Well, that's a simple question with a complicated answer. Let's put it this way. Compassionate accountability is exactly the same thing as tough love. You know, as parents, we talk about having tough love. And when I think about this balance of compassionate accountability or tough love, and we don't love our children, okay, and then get tough with them without both being present, both being tough and being loving. The same thing is true in business. We should not be demonstrating compassion most of the time without a level of accountability. And recently I came across a concept on this that I think helps us out, that will balance this when we talk about two types of respect. There's personal respect, or respect that's owed to you as a human being. And we should always be given human respect. And that's kind of the compassionate side of us. We're all struggling, Zach. We're all like in life with different levels of struggling and trying to do things. And we need to recognize that in that struggle, we all need a little compassion, a little grace. And a little bit of that every day doesn't hurt. Sometimes we need a lot of it. At the same time, in business, there's a level of responsibility that we have to demonstrate results, which is earned respect based on the accomplishments, the value that you bring to an organization, that you demonstrate to an organization. I accomplish the results that are expected of me. So when we talk about this idea of balancing compassion and accountability, it's not equal, it's situational. But I should always have some aspect in leadership of compassion and accountability, depending on the situation and what the individual needs from their manager, from their leader in that given situation.
I think I'm almost there. I think I'm almost with you, but I got to ask, why is compassionate accountability key to great leadership?
You know, there's a lot of keys, I think, to great leadership. And our definition, let me start with this. Our definition of leadership is the ability to build relationships so we can achieve our goals together with compassion and accountability. So let's break that down for a second. First, it's building relationships. You know, growing up, we're not taught how to have a relationship. We just kind of gravitate towards people we like.
Kind of luck into it.
Yeah. And sometimes maybe we have a coach or a mentor or a parent or a teacher or somebody that teaches us a little bit about how to get along. And they also teach us sometimes how to not get along. And the challenge that we have in leadership is really understanding this balance of respect that I talk about, but building relationships first. That comes from human connection. It comes from really two things as leaders that are directly correlated, scientifically correlated to leadership effectiveness, which is emotional intelligence and effective judgment or decision making. Those two things are the core, the fundamental parts of a leader. So let's look at this emotional intelligence. That connects with the human being at a compassionate level, an understanding level, an understanding of a person's struggles. We can see it in their face. We listen with our eyes. We listen to the tone of the voice. It's not just the words. And and then the accountability part, all right, it has a lot to do with the decision making in the situation. So it's complex, Zach. It's not just this one thing. It's all of these things together. But I think it starts with this: is we talk in my book on the 7 steps of intentional leadership. It's a model of inside out leadership development. In order to be compassionately accountable with others, we need to start by being compassionately accountable with ourselves. So I have a personal mission that holds me accountable to the life I want to lead, the person I want to be, how I'm going to show up every day. And trust me, I can read my mission statement every day and I will emotionally follow it sometimes and emotionally screw it up. But it's my anchor to follow that holds me accountable, that reminds me of how I'm going to show up every day. And then that ties into my ability to use the skills of emotional intelligence and decision making to be compassionately accountable to all of those around me. That's what makes it complicated.
Okay, now you use a really big word. You talked about emotional intelligence, and I hear that and my eyes glaze over. But I got to ask, you're the boss, you're the leader. So what's stopping us, or if we're the boss, if we're the leader, what stops us from being compassionately accountable, are doing that function? What are some of the impediments to compassionate accountability?
This is going to sound strange, Zach, but I think the first thing that's the biggest impediment is experience. Is we put people in these supervisory and leadership positions. You said that people are thrust into these positions quite often because they're the best salesperson, they're the best technician, they're the best something on the team, and they get thrown as a team leader or a supervisor. We don't develop those people. We don't teach them these different skills. Just because they were a good salesperson or a technician doesn't mean they have the skills, the human skills, to be an effective leader. So the challenge is that they watch leaders in their lifetime, right? And that might be 20 years, it might be 40 years, and they're thrust into this leadership position. And they see the way they handle people. And maybe they see a level of success that they have because they're as we target, they're a hard ass. They're going to hold people accountable. They're going to get the results, and they're successful with that. I'm going to say they're marginally successful, because what we don't look at over time is that toughness, that accountability without the compassion lets people know only one thing, that all they care about is the results. They don't care about the person. And that's what creates this scenario you started off with, where people leave their boss. They don't leave their company. They join a company, they leave their boss because that boss doesn't care about them. All they care about is the results. And so many stories that we hear, so many books that we read about leaders seem to show this tough side. And what you don't see is the compassionate side, the caring side. So they think that's what they have to be. But let's say their personality isn't, that's not the way I am, Zach. I'm not a tough person. So you know what? I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be nice. And, if I'm nice to Zach and I ask him nicely and say, hey, Zach, and I let him off the hook, you don't get the work done, but I know, you're just struggling right now. Don't worry about it. We'll get there. And I'm not going to get the results. And in fact, there's scientific studies that show if you're the nice guy or the nice gal all the time, you're only about 15 to 17% effective, because a couple of people will do what you ask them to do because you're nice, but most people won't. If you're the drill sergeant, the hard ass, and I know a drill sergeant because I was in the Army. So, I remember those days when I was a cadet in ROTC boot camp. When you're that drill sergeant, all you care about is accountability and the hard ass. Guess what? You're only about 15 to 17% effective. When you balance the two, Studies show you can be 7 times more effective by being both accountable and compassionate with these human beings in the right amount. And our biggest impediment to this is experience. And as I said, a lack of training and development. We're not given the skills of coaching, listening, communicating, actually taking the time to hear what people are saying as we're talking to them, asking them for their input, understanding their skill sets and their ability to contribute to the team, and recognizing, acknowledging that value that they bring to the team and lifting them up. All of these skills that are founded in decision making and emotional intelligence, but asking questions, listening, coaching is the most important skill of a leader. We don't train it. So they go based on experience. I mean, think about this, Zach. I mean, we make the same mistakes quite often our parents made. Why? Because we experienced as a child the way our parents treated us. So we do the same thing. And so I had a shift in my life. My shift was, my wife and I discussed this when my sons were growing up, that we weren't going to hit our children. Now, I was brought up by a naval officer who was brought up during the Depression. He was part of the greatest generation. He missed World War II by a year, joined the Navy, and he was tough. All right. He was going to bring his sons up tough, because that's what you need. You know, spare the rod, spoil the child. Great. That's the way we were brought. We did something wrong, we got hit. I can remember sitting at the dining room table. You forgot to say yes. Boink on top of the head with the spoon. Say please. Yes, sir. Please, can I have the salt? You know, I don't. To this day, I can still feel that spoon on the top of my head. Was it effective? Yes. However, I talked about leadership is about building relationships. The relationship I have with my sons is very different than the relationship I had with my father, because I didn't hit my sons. Well, except for this one time.
Don't matter. We're not going to go there.
I want to go there, because here was the mind shift. 2.5-year-old son, not listening to me, getting frustrated, whack him on the bottom. You're going to do what I tell you to do. And he's crying. My wife walks into the living room, and she says, so what's going on in here? And I'm the parent. Well, he won't listen to me. I told him what to do, and he wouldn't listen. And she says, okay, so we talked about this, but my experience was corporal punishment. And she says, well, you have other options. Yeah? Like what? Well, unfortunately, my wife was a counselor, so she had about 10 of them. Okay, she gave me a list.
I find it's easiest just to pick them up and move them.
Well, there's an option, right? You talk to them. You sit them down in the corner. You tell them that's unacceptable. You have them clean up the toys. You do it with them. I mean, so she gave me 10 options. I'm like, well, I'm not giving up, because, well, if I do all that, can I whack him then? Sure. He probably deserves it then if you want to do that. So I never hit my son again. Okay. I was trained. I was developed. I was given other options. We don't do enough of this with leaders. And we have leaders leading other managers and leaders that don't understand how to lead. You know what they do, Zach? They read a book, and the book tells them what to do. But you have to, in the moment, know how to do that what. That takes practice. It takes coaching. It takes training. It takes everyday awareness. And it is hard. It's really hard. And most of the time, we don't give people the support that they need to really make a difference as a leader and a manager with these other human beings, and we treat them poorly.
So tell us about your company.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Okay. Because I'll ask you the question. Play along with me for a second here, Zach. Okay. You ever had a bad boss?
Many.
Yeah. I get rid of them.
Okay.
So when I talk about getting rid of them, though, it's a great conversation piece, right? I don't tell people I'm a leadership consultant. We have leadership programs. People don't care about that. They don't give a damn. What's the outcome? What are we trying to achieve? More engaged employees, better results, better leaders. This is what we want. That's the means to the end. Yeah, we want to get better results. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at Gallup, okay, and 2/3 of the people in this country are either disengaged or actively disengaged. That's 66% of the population doesn't care about their job. How do we get people to care? Better leadership. How do we do that? You get rid of bad bosses. How do you get rid of bad bosses? You make them into good bosses and great leaders with compassion and accountability. That's the mission of Statarius, making good bosses into great leaders with compassion and accountability. So how do we do that? We connect the why, which is what's the purpose of an organization? What are the values of an organization? With the what, the outcomes, through the how. How do I be a better leader? Well, my 7 steps of intentional leadership is the how, but we also have 3 different leadership development programs at different levels in an organization to teach people how. At the highest level, it's strategic thinking, it's effective decision making, it's compassion and accountability, but at a high level, so that they create a culture within an organization that supports the results they want to achieve and the employees that they want to be part of their team. The middle management is the key to getting results. Middle management and supervisors have to be in a position where they support the employees that are getting the work done. They work with them with the skills of coaching, with emotional intelligence, with daily tactical decision making that supports the overall strategy. Okay. And then the first line supervisors are there to really help people develop those fundamental technical skills to get the work done. You know, they have to understand how to develop an accountability process to hold people accountable. And we talk about compassion and accountability. I want to hold people accountable. How? How do we do that? And people think, well, you know what, Zach, you screwed that up. You need to do this. Or Zach, you did a great job. That's great. I'm giving you feedback. That's accountability. No, it's not. That's only the end step. Before we do that, we have to have an understanding of the values of the organization and the mission, the strategy of the organization and the goals. And then we bring that all the way down in the organization. So the goals, the behavioral expectations, the tactical projects that need to get done, the activities and tasks that the person is getting done, and the priorities of those tasks so that people feel empowered to get things done within those priorities every single day. That's a process of clear, concise expectations from top down. And that's the hard work. That's what we do.
Based on your experience, what advice would you give young and youth entrepreneurs who want to pursue a career similar to yours?
I wouldn't recommend anybody to follow a career similar to mine, Zach. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I really do. If you have an interest in leadership and management, then start early. Find opportunities, because if you read books and you get yourself into situations where you experience management supervision and become a student of it, throw yourself into it. At the same time, I think there's one huge key. Find mentors. Find people who can coach and develop and help you get your mindset right. Approach this in a way that is your personality style, your emotional intelligence, decision-making capabilities, and keep working on who you are, what you are, and how you engage human beings in building relationships. Learn to build relationships first. The leadership will come, but learn to build relationships. Talk to people, ask questions, focus on them, not on you. And if you do that, that humility, that recognition of how other people can bring value to your life will create leadership capabilities in you that you won't even realize. Like for the first 10 years, you won't even know you're doing it because you're building relationships.
Actually, that's not quite where I was going.
Okay.
I mean, you've been an entrepreneur for how long?
15. Well, I started my first business in 1990, 1996. I wasn't very successful. Okay. So if I look at my history, look, it's pretty, yeah, it's
so that's where I was wanting to go. I mean, if you had advice for young people, because I don't think that today's young person starts out life saying, I want to be an employee that working in a sweatshop a
That's right.
1,000 hours a week.
That's
You
right.
know, they look at life and they say, I gotta find something in myself that I can control, that I can produce. You know, I may have to have a side gig. It may start there, but I gotta find it in myself. And I was told once when I was out in Silicon Valley, to say you always gotta have you need to have a project in your back pocket
Hmm.
because you never know when somebody with some money is going to say, well, what would you do
Mm.
if you had all the money? So what would you do?
Yeah.
You
I
know,
love
and
that.
at
Yeah.
that point, you know, you got, so that's my question. I mean, you've been there, you know what it's like to wake up with an idea and say, okay, I'm going to do this, and then start to work on it. And then, you know, a year, 2 years, 5 years later, you're still doing it. The doors are still open and the lights are still on. So that's my question.
So
What advice would you give young people in that regard?
yeah, I think there's a couple of different paths, that you've got to find your path. First of all, do you want to provide a service? Do you want to provide a product? Because and I talk about this from a sales standpoint. You need to learn how to sell. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to learn how to sell. You need to learn marketing and selling, because in the market, you've got to look at something. They've got these diagrams that they name, and they say, okay, so what are you good at? What does the world need? And in this country, can you make money at it? And can you develop something that combines all of that into some kind of a product or a service that you can offer to fill the need? Well, that's nice. That's kind of the what. But there's a lot of steps in between. For me, I went after a very high level thing that we call leadership. And I started when I was 16 years old in a Boy Scout, and I saw this troop leader turn the troop around in a matter of minutes. And I was like, and I went up to him after, and I said, what is that? And he says, well, that's leadership. And I've always liked complex. So I was like, I want to learn how to do that. So I got an Army ROTC scholarship. I got a degree in mechanical and metallurgical engineering. I went into the Army for 4.5 years. Quickly realized that culture was not for me, but it was great experience. I was in command at 25 years old as a captain in the Army, in command of 120 soldiers. So I learned a lot, and I learned a lot from my senior non-commissioned officers, my sergeants. I learned from them. I walked around. I admitted openly to them, I don't know what I'm doing, so tell me what I should do. They were my mentors while I was in that situation. So we learn from everyone. Be curious, not critical. Be curious on how you can get better and better and better. Went to work for Procter and Gamble. Why Procter and Gamble? Because they had a 3-month training program, and I needed to kind of get deprogrammed from the military and go into civilian life. And that 3-month transition really helped me. So part of it, I think, that you're talking about, Zach, is being humble enough to recognize what I don't know, and seeking that out, seeking others out as mentors, as coaches, as teachers, and listening and hearing these things while you're taking leadership opportunities. And at 11 years in manufacturing, I started my first business, and wasn't very successful, Zach. I was just my first jaunt into the entrepreneurial world. Was not successful. I barely was able to pay the bills. I had to teach tennis. I'm a tennis player, so I had to teach tennis to pay the mortgage. All right, but here's what I learned. I did work with Stephen Covey, training the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I did work for Ken Blanchard, training the 1-Minute Manager in situational leadership. And I said to myself, what have they got that I don't have? Well, they had everything. I mean, they had a company, they had a terminal degree, they had books, and they had programs. So I'm like, okay, I think I've got this. I went back into business, into technology, so a whole other field that I got into. I was VP of sales and marketing for several good-sized companies, and built them up, helped sales teams learn how to sell. Okay. Started this company in 2009 after I spent 5.5 years finishing my master's and my doctorate while I was the VP of sales and marketing for 2 different startups. Trust me, that's not a path you want to take. But it was one that I felt I needed to do what I saw at the highest level Ken Blanchard and Stephen Covey do. Okay. So I got my doctorate and I wrote a book. I wrote a second book, and now we have programs, and I've got 8 statarians that work for me developing and delivering coaching, training, development. And we've built a company like what I saw with Dr. Covey and Dr. Blanchard. So it
Dr.
only, by
Gary,
the way, I was 55 years old when I got my doctorate and I started this company. Okay. So I was a late blooming entrepreneur. But it's never too late.
Dr. Gary, I want to ask you this question. How do you define impact? What does impact mean to you?
It means that I make a difference in another human being's life. I mean, if we can do that, nothing else matters. If you get to do what I do by having an impact and having a business and making money and doing it with some really smart, incredible human beings that I get to work with every day, my staff, that it's just like nothing's better than that. I'm fulfilling this mission, this vision of leadership.
So how do you coach
making a difference?
So
how do you approach it?
How do you coach it? You know, you say you want to make, in order to deliver impact, you need to make a difference with other people.
Yeah.
So that's great when it's you. You know, to use a military analogy, you know, it's not about what you do. It's about what you can get your team to do.
Yes.
You know, it's about getting your team up to speed. And then in that regard, by extension, helping your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So the question then becomes, how do you coach impact? How do you let your team know what they need to do to be impactful?
So I think the question needs to be slightly shifted, because you don't make the team impactful in the beginning. You make each individual understand their role on the team, their contribution with their strengths. And one of the things that we have to unlearn, I think, in school is that I was good at all these subjects, but those subjects are not necessarily what I'm talented at. And teams are great because they focus on the talents of each individual's talents. If the team can focus on the talents and bring those out in the individuals, and then see how that fits to the value of the team, people are going to feel that they're being valued as a team member and that they belong to that team. It's everything about leadership and people development is inside out. I have to understand what I stand for and what I bring to the table, and then find a team that I can contribute to, that I can impact. Once we do that and that team comes together and they understand what the impact of each individual has to offer, then the team, as we define synergy, is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. But they've got to bring out those individual talents and strengths first.
As we start to wrap up, Dr. Gary, is there anything you wish more people would ask you?
You know, I'm not really sure. It's kind of fun because I don't tell people what I do. I tell them I get rid of bad bosses, and the look on people's face is always kind of fun. We joke with it and go, "Oh, what are you, a corporate hitman?" I'm like, well, you could look at it that way. I think that.
So let's come at it in a different way.
Yeah.
So where this question comes from is during the pandemic, during the lockdown, I ended up speaking. I did a podcast. I did a bunch of interviews, and I ended up speaking with a lot of magicians. You know, people who were doing things in business, but the way they saw themselves as magicians. And one of the things they would tell me is that you gotta always have a gag, a trick in your back pocket. So that, you know, because wherever you go to a dinner party, you go out to lunch, people are going to ask you, show me something. You tell me you're a magician, show it to me.
Show me, yeah.
You know, let me know So the question
Prove
then
it. Yeah.
becomes,
Yeah.
the way I approach this question is, if you're at a dinner party and someone asks you, they say, okay, we know you're a leadership guru. We know that. We know you told us you're a leadership guru. Show me something.
Yeah.
What would be that one question which would let them know that you are who you say you are?
Well, I've already alluded to this once, but I'll say the question is this. I ask them a question, and the question is, what is the single most important thing you need to do to be a more effective leader? And I'm going to give you the answer, and I doubt that you're going to give it to me. I'm just going to challenge you. It's a pop quiz. What's the one thing that you need to have in order to be an effective leader? And I'll get anything. I need to be able to coach. I need to communicate. People talk about skills. I'm like, nope, nope, nope. I need to be able to communicate, but I need to be able to be a public speaker and inspire. I need to inspire people. No, that's not it. What's at the core of this? What's at the focused one thing that you need to have? And when people ask me, I'll pull out my magic trick, Zach. And the magic trick is this. The single most important thing you need to have to start on this leadership journey is to have a written, personal mission statement that reminds you every day of who you are, what you stand for, and holds you accountable to that, so that as life hits you, as things go wrong, as you are challenged with life, you're going to say stupid things, you're going to make mistakes, and that mission statement will remind you to get back to your center. When you do that, then you can impact other people. You can engage them in a positive way, in the way you want to show up, because you're reminding yourself every day of the person you want to be. Then and only then can you consistently impact the lives of other people.
So is there anything new on the horizon that you feel comfortable sharing with us? You got any new projects or a new book or something? Is there anything new on the horizon that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
Well, I do. We're in the middle of developing a executive level leadership program right now. We've had 2 levels in our leadership program that called Leader Step 7, and our leadership program was developed. I developed this 10, 11 years ago to start, based on research that we did on why leadership programs fail. And I identified those things, and we created Leader Step 7 that primarily has a process over 8 or 9 months that includes assessments, selecting the right people, coaching, training, mentoring, team building, and an application. So we have this process that engages all of that, and all of our programs follow this process. But recently, we're working with the team on a very high-level leadership development program for executives. So as I've said, emotional intelligence and effective decision-making are the keys to leadership effectiveness. However, at the highest level, what we need is really, really good business model strategy and marketing strategy and cultural strategy in order to be able to create successful companies. We have developed a leadership program that creates strategic level thinking, and actually during the program will create projects that are a strategic level initiatives that will come out of this program and more than pay for the leadership program itself. In multiples, it'll pay for it, because a lot of companies struggle with having really, really strong, good return on investment initiatives that they can bring teams together and implement to save money, look at market opportunities, be competitively advantaged, whatever it might be in terms of a strategy. And our program is going to do that.
Dr. Gary, thank you for joining us on the Subscription Maker Impact.
Thank you, Zach. It's been a pleasure.
Before we wrap, too many people work way too hard and earn too little from their online businesses. You don't have to be one of them. And that's a wrap.